Megumi strolls around the town all dressed up, and some villagers comment on her look, saying that there's no place in the village where she can go dressed up like this. Some villagers tell her that the Buddhist statues around the village have been strangely destroyed, but she finds the village talk very annoying and beneath her. She thinks about how she wants to go to a big city to get scouted, and how she only likes two things in the village, which consist of a big fancy European house built on a mountain and a guy named Natsuno who moved from a big city to the village. Some days later, a junior monk named Seishin discovers the Murasako family's two dead bodies at a remote part of the village, and he tells the police that he found them dead when he came to check up on them. The villagers weren't attending his calls, due to which he visited them personally and discovered that the Murasako family was dead along with their neighbor who had also died in his house. The police tell him that one of the members died due to natural causes, but the other two bodies were decomposed beyond comprehension, and that probably wild dogs ate the bodies. After they leave, the Ozaki clinic Dr. Toshio discusses with Seishin that out of the three bodies, the old lady died a few days later than the other two bodies, which means that she lived with the dead bodies for a few days. In the Sotoba village, Megumi has an existential crisis as she wonders whether she should post a letter to someone or not. She is thinking about her third world problems when her classmate joins her, and they both head to the summer school. Another classmate joins them soon, and they both start talking about the recent death, so Megumi becomes annoyed and runs away from them. She spots Natsuno at a distance and stops to chit-chat with him, but as usual, he ignores her fully. She mentions that she cannot wait to leave the village, which makes him look at her briefly, and she starts freaking out that he at least looked at her. A day later, the roadside restaurant owner named Kanami and her mother come across a guy named Tatsumi at their doorstep who is looking to head to the Sotoba village, and Kanami guides him about the directions. Tatsumi then heads towards the fancy European-styled mansion on the top of the hill, which is called Kanamasa, and the next day, the villagers start gossiping about his arrival. Megumi also starts daydreaming that the people in the Kanamasa will invite her inside and ask her to become their daughter after looking at her unique style. Her classmate Kaori then tells her that according to the rumors, a whole family has moved in the mansion, which consists of a couple with their daughter. Her dreams get crushed, but still she walks towards Kanamasa and keeps daydreaming about the people living inside. Suddenly she feels like someone is watching her, and a person steps outside the gate. Later at night, Kaori's mom informs her that Megumi still hasn't returned home, and soon the news spreads around the village that Megumi is missing. All the men head out in the woods to look for her, and soon a guy comes across Megumi lying in the ditch. They bring her inside, and the doctor checks up on her only to reveal that she is anemic, but otherwise she is alright. She doesn't say anything and only tells the doctor that she is very sleepy. Sometime later, Kaori also comes across the lady who is living in the Kanamasa named Chizuru. She later checks up on Megumi and tells her about meeting Chizuru. Megumi closes her eyes and sees dancing shadows and visions. She thinks about how beautiful Chizuru is and then falls asleep. Some days later, the town doctor Toshio gets a call informing him that Megumi has passed away, which shocks everyone in the village. Dr. Toshio wonders why Megumi has died even though she only had anemia, and he asks her parents to let him do an autopsy on her body. Her father almost hits him in anger and tells him that he cannot allow him to do an autopsy. Later, Natsuno heads out of his house even though his mom reminds him that they have to go to Megumi's funeral. He is wandering around when a pet dog jumps on him, and the dog's owner named Ritsuko comes rushing behind him. She explains to him that she just changed the dog's collar and then asks him about his health. They both chit-chat as they stroll around the village, and he mentions that his dad made them move to the Sotoba village. They both come across some villagers who gossip about the two of them, and Natsuno mentions that he hates the gossiping villagers. Kaori visits Megumi's room and spots a greeting card which Megumi had written for Natsuno before her death. She starts crying when she sees the card, and at the same time, Ritsuko tells Natsuno that she doesn't want to leave the village because she lives with her mother and little sister. The villagers gather for Megumi's funeral, and Kaori spots Natsuno there, so she thanks him for attending the funeral. She asks him whether he can receive a card from Megumi, but he refuses the card and walks away. The funeral proceeds as people take her coffin to the burial site, and Kaori keeps thinking about how the people aren't even mourning her death properly. At the time of the burial, she asks Megumi's parents whether she can place a gift beside her coffin, and the monk Seishin allows her to put the gift beside Megumi. Natsuno keeps thinking about Megumi since she used to passionately stalk him and he obsesses over him. At the same time, Dr. Toshio gets Megumi's blood test results back, which reveal that she had a special type of anemia which is caused by serious blood loss or bleeding. He wonders what the cause for anemia was, and that the autopsy would have definitely given them some answers. He then gets a call from the Jichi family living in the village about a potential death in their family. Meanwhile, a neighbor visits Katuda family but does not receive any answer from the old lady living inside because she has passed away. The nurses in the Ozaki clinic discuss that there's a cold passing around in the village and that the 2 dead people from before also had a cold before they passed away. They then get a call from Gatuda family's neighbor telling them that Fuki Gatuda has passed away. Toshio receives the news that Fuki was very sleepy and in daze before her death, which makes Toshio think that Megumi was also facing the same symptoms before her death. He then calls the Sotoba local office to ask them how many villagers have died in the current month. Monk Seishin also receives the news about Fuki's death and his colleagues discuss that a lot of people have died in the current summer. Later Natsuno is doing his homework when he notices a ruffle outside in the bushes where Megumi used to stalk him. He becomes shocked and immediately shuts his window without investigating anything. Toshio and Seishin discuss that there have been many recent deaths in the village and that the cause of all their deaths is unknown. Later, both of them meet with the local office representative who informs them that 10 people have died in the last few days. They jump at the worst-case scenario that maybe there's an epidemic spreading in the village, and Toshio explains that some of the symptoms are common among all the deceased people. He even informs them that a villager named Now came to his clinic with the same initial symptoms as Megumi, and they all discuss what steps they can take to get to the bottom of the ongoing situation. Natsuno wonders why he has suddenly started closing his blinds again, but he still refuses to open them because he thinks that someone is watching him. The next day, Natsuno is walking to school without even waiting for the bus when his schoolmate Toru picks him up along with her friend Ritsuko. They notice that he looks really sleepy, and on the way they come across Toru's brother Tomatsu and his friend Masao. They also approach the car to get a ride, but Masao notices Natsuno sitting in the car, which sours his mood, and he decides to walk to the school instead. Tomatsu runs after him and Toru comments that Masao hates Natsuno for some reason. In the past, Natsuno once got a flat tire on his bike and he met Toru on the way, who offered to help him out even though Natsuno refused his advances. Toru fixed up his bike nonetheless and asked Natsuno about his first name, but Natsuno refused to reveal his first name because he didn't want to get close with anyone. Later he visited Toru again when he got another flat tire, and Toru mentioned his first name, which he had learned from his dad. In the present, Toru drops Ritsuko off at the clinic, and at the clinic, Toshio tells her to fetch Now for some blood tests. He thinks that Nao's blood test is showing the same results as Megumi, which makes him wonder what the cause behind the symptoms is. Masao's family decides to head out for dinner and Masao refuses to go with them. He thinks about how he doesn't get along with his sister-in-law Chizuko since he thinks that she dislikes him because of his antisocial personality. Toshio's friend Mikiyasu brings Nao to Ozaki clinic and Toshio scolds him for not bringing her in sooner. He notices insect bites on her arm and then orders a bunch of tests for her condition. Mikiyasu then tells him that Nao fell sick 3 days ago and that none of the other family members are sick. Toshio asks him whether any of his customers or people living around him have any strange symptoms, so he tells him that he met the Kirishiki family some time ago who have moved into the Kanamasa mansion. He reveals that the couple seemed strange and promised to pay them another visit. Toshio then tells him that they may have to move Nao to a city hospital, while he thinks that he cannot save her at this point. Later at night, a strange girl named Tsunako visits Seishin and tells him that she likes reading his stories. She reveals that she has read all his stories, including his story about the Death Village, which seems inspired by their village Sotoba. She then mentions that he looks really normal and that just slitting his wrists won't kill him. She then walks away while Seishin looks at the scars on his wrists. At the end of the month, Nao passes away, and when Masao hears the news, he runs to Toru's house to inform him about Nao's death. He even suggests that there may be an epidemic in the village and then tells Natsuno that he was very cold when he rejected Megumi before her death. Natsuno tells him to grow up and they both start fighting, so Toru pulls Masao back. Masao accuses Toru of siding with Natsuno and storms out of the house. Toru then tells Natsuno that he should act like the bigger man, and Natsuno decides to sleep in his house for the night because he cannot sleep properly at his house. After he is asleep, Toru goes out to buy a drink and comes across Tatsumi, who resides at the Kanamasa mansion. Toru invites him to come by his house to hang out, and Tatsumi quickly accepts his invitation. Kaori's brother Akira tells her that there's definitely something sus going on in the village because people keep dying after coming into contact with the Kirishiki family living in the Kanamasa mansion. Seishin gets a call informing him that another villager has passed away, which raises the head count of the dead people to 12. He then gets another call informing him that the police officer Takami has passed away and that he was suffering from a cold for a few days. Later, Takami's wife and 2 kids move out of the village without informing anyone, and Tatsumi's van comes to pick them up to help them move out of the village. Takami's replacement named Sasaki arrives at the village instantly, and Ritsuko discusses with the villagers that the same moving truck helped move another family in the middle of the night as well. Soon Nao's son Susumu gets gravely sick and Toshio tries to save him. An ambulance arrives for him and Toshio notices that even Mikiyasu seems sick, which makes him wonder whether they both got the symptoms from now. He manages to get a blood samples from both Mikiyasu and Susumu, and after testing the blood, he discovers that they both have the same symptoms as Megumi. In the meanwhile, Natsuno struggles to sleep as he keeps dreaming that Megumi is coming into his room from the outside, which startles him awake again and again. Seishin is heading to his secret base through a forest when he comes across Tsunako. He leads her into the church and she reveals that she cannot go out during the daytime because of a sickness she has, due to which she usually comes out at nighttime. She even reveals that her parents moved to the village due to her sickness, and Seishin starts thinking about Mikiyasu and Susumu's sickness, which upsets him. Tsunako mentions that death is a very terrible thing and then asks him to let her come back to the church, after which she runs out. The next day, Toshio gets the confirmation from the city hospital that Mikiyasu has also passed away, and he holds an emergency meeting with his staff to discuss the increasing deaths in the village. They discuss that the 19 deaths must be caused by some kind of epidemic and that they need to involve the public health department to look into the deaths. Toshio decides to write a report to the department with some data and symptoms, and they all discuss that the symptoms are linked to renal failure and that it could be potentially linked to some kind of transmission through an animal. At the end, they all decide to keep the matter to themselves to avoid spreading panic in the village. Natsuno falls asleep on the bus and wakes up to find Megumi sitting in front of him. He becomes shocked to death, but the illusion fades away and he then gets dropped at the bus stop. Toru meets him on the way and takes him to his house when Natsuno requests to sleep over at his house. Toru then asks him to come with him because he wants to ask Ritsuko out on a date. Natsuno thinks that she is too old for him but agrees to accompany him because the pathetic wuss cannot go alone. Natsuno then falls asleep quickly and Toru tells him that he has bought a separate mattress for him. Later, he dreams that Megumi is watching from outside the house and that she is in the house looking for him. She comes to his room and he wakes up slightly, only to discover that it was only Toru's sister. He then turns around and notices to his shock Megumi's face peeking out from under the bed. She creepily gets out and tells him that she doesn't like Toru because of their closeness. She then looks outside the window and asks Tatsumi whether she is speaking the truth, after which she gets on top of Toru and bites his neck. Later, Natsuno wakes up and rushes to Toru's side in panic, but he notices that his neck doesn't have any mark or wound. Toru wakes up wondering what he is doing and Natsuno then heads back to sleep. The next day, Seishin heads to the families of the deceased people to find any clues, and he meets with Megumi's relative to ask about another death that happened in the family. The relative tells him that the deceased person Ryuji had handed in his resignation before his death and then had a heart attack all of a sudden. He then visits the next family, who tell him the same thing, that the deceased person had quit his job 3 days ago and his dead body was found in the pachinko parlor. Seishin meets with the next family, whose representative tells him that the deceased person had quit his job as well and that he knows 2 other deceased people who had also quit their jobs before dying. Seishin heads to meet the next family and comes across the liquor store owner named Tomio fighting with his employee. Tomio then gets a call from his employee telling him that his daughter was sick, due to which he called an ambulance, but she has passed away just now. Tomio tells him to get a hold of himself and storms off on his van to check up on him. Seishin then visits a library nearby where he learns that the librarian has recently quit his job without any specific reason. He gets back to his temple and thinks about all the cases and the similarities between them. Natsuno notices that Toru isn't coming to school, and Toru's sister Aoi tells him that he has been staying up all night to play games, due to which he isn't coming to school. Natsuno visits him the next morning and sees Toshio visiting the house as well. He rushes inside only to discover that Toru has actually passed away. Later, he is at his home when his mom comes to tell him about Toru's funeral and also gives him a postcard that was just delivered. The postcard turns out to be from Megumi, and Natsuno assures her that it must be delivered late. At the same time, Masao's nephew becomes sick and his family members rush out to take him to the Ozaki clinic. Natsuno rips apart Megumi's postcard and throws it outside his window, where Megumi used to peep at him from. Later, Hiromi's family brings him back and discusses how they need to take him to the clinic again even if he gets a little bit more sick. Masao then tells his family that even little kids can die now, and his father slaps him hard before storming off. His brother also scolds him a lot, due to which he runs out of his house. He runs over to Toru's house where his family is having a funeral for him and tries to say something to his siblings without sounding like an idiot. Natsuno arrives at the house and asks his parents to let him see Toru's face. After he sees the face, he pays his condolences to the family and feels very angry about not being able to do anything. He storms out and Masao starts crying after watching everything. Later, he keeps yapping about Toru to his siblings and notices that Natsuno is just sitting there not saying anything. He calls Natsuno cold-blooded and tries to pick a fight with him, so Natsuno tells him to pick up a fight with him some other time. He keeps throwing comments at him, but Natsuno doesn't respond to him, and Toru's sister Aoi then yells at him to shut up. He storms out in anger and rushes back to his house, where he finds the front door closed. He then notices someone going towards the back of his house, so he follows him, and when he reaches the back door, a man jumps on him. The man starts to drink his blood while Masao realizes that the man is actually the local librarian. Megumi visits Natsuno's house again like a certified stalker and sees her torn up postcard outside his window. She starts crying instantly and then walks away in tears. Later, Natsuno notices that Megumi must have visited his house again, and he thinks that he won't let her kill him. In the meanwhile, Toshio checks up on Hiromi and declares him dead. At the same time, Masao remains sick in his room and doesn't even come down even when he hears his family members crying. Toshio gets another patient in his clinic who has the same symptoms as the other patients, and his wife tells him that she gave him a homemade medicinal remedy which worsened his symptoms. Toshio ends up yelling at her for doing something so stupid, and the nurses hold him off. Later, Seishin meets up with him and tells him that most of the deceased people had quit their jobs before dying. He also informs him that 22 families have left the village without any proper notice, but Toshio does not think that such facts relate to the epidemic and even yells at him for telling him such stupid things. He tells him that he has been wasting his time and storms off in anger. He also recalls his father, who would always tell him that any death in the village brings disgrace to the Ozaki family. Later, Seishin is at the secret church when Tsunako visits him and asks him to autograph one of his books. He advises her to not wander around the night and explains that there is a disease spreading throughout the village. She assures him they have a live-in doctor at home who looks after her and her mother, who is also sick, and tells him not to worry much. Soon Masao passes away as well, and Natsuno visits the rental store to rent a DVD about vampires. He then goes to Toru's house to watch the vampire-related movies with Toru's brother named Tomatsu. Tomatsu tells him about the village lore according to which the dead people called the Risen can come back to haunt people if they are acting bad, which gets Natsuno thinking. Later, he visits the library to read a book on vampires, but he doesn't find anything. He then comes across Seishin's name on the borrowers list, so he visits his temple to look for him. He comes across Seishin's mother Miwako, who tells him that Seishin must have borrowed the books from the library to use them as research material because he also writes novels on the side. In the meanwhile, the villagers discuss the recent deaths, and one of the villagers named Ikumi warns them that the villagers have started dying ever since the family moved into the Kanamasa mansion. Soon another villager named Itsuko gets admitted to the Ozaki clinic with the same symptoms, and Toshio tells the nurses to give her a blood transfusion to treat her. Just then Ritsuko gets a call from a part-time nurse named Takano telling her that she is quitting the job because she fears for her life. Soon Itsuko gets better and heads home, so Toshio visits her at home to get her blood. He notices the insect bites on her arm again and tells her to visit the clinic the next day as well, even though it's a Sunday. The next day when she doesn't come, he calls her husband and tells him to bring Itsuko to his clinic quickly. Meanwhile, Natsuno makes a wooden cross to protect himself against bloodsuckers. Itsuko ends up dying and Toshio declares her dead soon afterwards. He heads back to his clinic and comes across Natsuno, who asks him whether Megumi was really dead on her deathbed. Toshio assures him that Megumi has actually died and even jokes around that the only way for her to come back to life is for her to become a zombie or a vampire. Natsuno runs away while Toshio keeps thinking about his own joke. Kaori and Akira hide in the bushes around Kanamasa mansion because Akira thinks he has seen one of the dead villagers go inside the mansion. Masao wakes up from a sweet dream and finds himself trapped inside his coffin, so he starts to pound at the coffin to get outside. In the meanwhile, Tatsumi spots Kaori and Akira stalking the Kanamasa mansion, and before he can get to them, Natsuno spots them as well. He leads them away from the mansion and tells them that someone was watching them. He then asks them whether they are suspicious of the mansion people, and Akira hugs him in relief because no one believed him when he tried to warn them about the Kirishiki family who live in the mansion. They all talk at the shrine where they discuss that they have seen Megumi and another villager after their death, and Natsuno decides to dig Megumi's grave to find out the truth. Masao recalls that his family members kept trying to apologize to him after Hiromi's death, but they thought he was ignoring them and never checked up on his sick condition. He would daily open his window for the vampire villager who sucked his blood and ordered him not to tell anyone about him. In the present, he keeps trying to get out of his coffin, and soon someone opens up his coffin to let him out. The sicko guy Tatsumi tells him that he is one of the special risen people who came back to life and that not everyone comes back to life, so he should consider himself special. He then gives him a crash course that he cannot die unless someone cuts off his head or drives a stake through his heart, and that sunlight can end his life as well. Tatsumi takes him to the Yumeri area in the village where the original 3 deaths happened and gives him a place to stay. He tells him that he has to feed on human blood to survive and then shows him a human kid who has been weakened deliberately by him so that he cannot feed on him. Masao refuses to feed on him, so Tatsumi threatens to leave him in sunlight and warns him that he himself can walk in sunlight so he can always throw him out when he is sleeping. He keeps motivating him to kill the human and then pushes him into the room where he shuts him up. Masao's vampire instincts awaken and he lunges at the glass of blood which is lying on the side. Soon Nao's mother-in-law Setsuko falls ill as well and Toshio asks her to be admitted at the clinic so that he can supervise her fully. Akira and Kaori sneak out of their house to dig Megumi's grave and Akira starts to cold feet because she thinks that they are doing an immoral act by digging someone's grave. Toshio meets up with Seishin again, who tells him that the local office representative Ishida has gone missing, which means that they cannot get the government involved in the case of the rising deaths. Toshio then declares that he knows the reason behind the deaths and tells him everything from the symptoms to the fact that the creatures called vampires or the risen are behind the villagers' deaths. He tells him that he is planning to capture one of the vampires by keeping his patient Setsuko at the clinic and asks him to help him out, so Seishin asks him to give him some time to think about it. Akira and Kaori meet up with Natsuno, who gives them digging equipment, and they all head to Megumi's grave to dig her up. Kaori keeps thinking about Megumi's funeral which she attended, and Natsuno then starts to dig her grave. Seishin has a chat with the creepy Tsunako in which she mentions that he keeps mentioning in his novels that God has forsaken him, but he does not look forsaken in real life. He shares with her that he is worried for her because of her illness and that she must be really lonely because she cannot wander out at nighttime. Kaori notices her gift lying on the ground beside Megumi's grave, which she had placed inside Megumi's coffin, and she wonders what the gift is doing on the ground. They all dig up the grave and soon the sun sets. Natsuno hits the coffin and slides the cover only to discover that there is no body inside. Just then a creature drags Kaori into the woods and he is about to sink his teeth into her neck when she pulls out a charm which was in Megumi's gift. The vampire shrinks back and Natsuno then hits him with a shovel which knocks him down. He then checks his body only to discover that he isn't breathing, and the group discusses that Natsuno may have killed him. Natsuno decides to put him into Megumi's grave, and when he grabs him to pull him, he notices that his body seems really cold, which is unusual for a recently dead body. They all realize that the man may be one of the risen, and Natsuno once again decides to dump his body into Megumi's grave. He explains to the others that they can come check the next day whether the man is still alive, and once they are convinced, the boys drag his body into Megumi's grave. They put a little dirt on him and then head back to their homes. Later, Kaori is unable to sleep and Akira joins in his room because they are both a bunch of pathetic losers. She finds him under the bed because he was too scared of her, and they both then lay on the bed side by side. They discuss what will happen if the vampire comes back to life, and Akira decides to tell his classmates about what's happening. Natsuno also lies in his bed with trembling hands and thinks about how he hit the guy with the shovel. In the meanwhile, the vampire wakes up in Megumi's grave and gets up to find the brats who knocked him down. The next morning, the whole group rushes to Megumi's grave to discover what happened and find that the grave has been put back into its original condition. They realize that the vampire must have put it back, and Akira thinks that they should barge inside Kanamasa Mansion to take care of the vampires. Natsuno thinks that they should assess their enemies first, and the siblings mention that one of their neighbors called Motohashi has recently died, so Natsuno decides to spectate her grave to see whether she will rise or not. He even thinks that he will stake her heart in order to confirm whether vampires can die or not. They all watch the funeral take place and follow the villagers into the forest where they dig Motohashi's grave. After the funeral, Seishin thinks about Toshio's words and thinks that Tsunako may be a vampire since she cannot go out in the sun as well. A strange girl visits Natsuno's house and asks his dad where Natsuno is, so his dad tells him that Natsuno hasn't come back home yet. She insists on coming inside and uses a puppet doll to talk to him, which makes him think that she is really strange. He asks her to come the next day, but she starts complaining loudly and even throws the puppet inside the house in anger. Natsuno's mom asks his dad to let her come inside and they invite her inside. She then decides to wait in Natsuno's room, and when his dad objects, she uses hypnosis on him to make him listen to her. She tells them to invite her brother inside as well and then heads to Natsuno's room. Seishin meets up with Toshio at his clinic and they both keep a watch on his patient together. Seishin then starts to tell him about his latest novel, which revolves around two brothers in which a brother named Shiki kills his younger brother out of jealousy. At the same time, Megumi heads to Natsuno's house while the strange girl who is Tsunako waits for Natsuno at his house. Toshio shares his theory with Seishin that the vampires take 3 to 4 days to kill their victim because they cannot drink all the blood in one go. The next morning, the patient's condition improves and they celebrate their mini success. Ritsuko arrives at the clinic and discusses with her fellow nurse that they should stay overnight as well, but Toshio doesn't allow them to stay for the night. Later Toshio has a meeting with all his staff in which he seems zoned out due to staying up all night. After the meeting, a nurse asks him to let them stay overnight because he seems really tired, but he doesn't accept her suggestion. He then comes across his own wife Kyuko when he leaves the clinic, and she informs him that his mom told her to come because he needs her. He tells her to go back, and she insists that she wants to stay because she has already temporarily closed her store. His mom named Taki interrupts them and tells Kyuko to stay with Toshio. She also scolds Toshio for always being so busy and asks him whether there is an epidemic in the village, so he lies to her that there may be an epidemic. She tells him to stay away from a patient with such symptoms and reminds him that he has to uphold the legendary Ozaki family's heritage. He heads away and tells her to get married if she wants another heir. Later at night, Ritsuko makes food for Toshio, who is staying overnight again, and she discusses with her sister Midori that the patient Setsuko is still sick. She heads out towards the clinic, and at the same time, Seishin and Toshio discuss what kind of powers the vampires may have. Ritsuko goes through the woods and notices Now heading towards the clinic, which shocks her greatly because Now died a long time ago. Seishin and Toshio hear a noise outside window, and they pull the blinds up to discover that Now is outside the window even though they are on the second floor. Now falls back on the ground, and Toshio yells at her that he is not granting her permission to come inside. The next day, Ritsuko feeds Setsuko breakfast, who has recovered a lot, and Toshio mentions that she was talking in her sleep a lot. She recalls that she saw Now some days ago and that she must be dreaming, so Toshio tells her to snap out of her dreams and that he will save her no matter what happens. Later he is fast asleep and Kyuko tries to wake him up, but he doesn't budge. She then heads outside the clinic and sees Tatsumi at a distance. Later at night, Setsuko bids her husband good night and soon falls asleep in the clinic. Seishin and Toshio discuss the vampires once again when suddenly the light turns off. They think that the vampires may be near, and Seishin heads downstairs to turn on the generator. Setsuko starts to hear Nao's voice telling her to come outside, so she gets up and starts to go outside. Toshio tries to snap her out of the trance, and at the same time, Seishin notices that the clinic is surrounded by a group of vampires including Megumi. He tells her that they do not have permission to come inside, and Megumi mentions that they do have permission. Upstairs, Tatsumi barges inside and knocks Toshio down. Seishin rushes to his side while Tatsumi picks up Setsuko. He tells the both of them that he has been told not to touch them yet and then jumps out with Setsuko. The vampires surround Setsuko and all of them bite her together. She then collapses on the ground, after which the vampires run away and Toshio discovers that Setsuko has passed away. Megumi separates herself from the other vampires and rushes to Natsuno's house because she is a simp before anything else. Natsuno's mother comes to his room to tell the girl that Natsuno must be coming home soon, and she finds her sitting in the darkness. She thinks of turning on the light, but the girl named Shizuka warns her not to turn on the light. Natsuno arrives home and his parents tell him about Shizuka, who is waiting for him. He goes to his room and doesn't see any girl inside, but sees that his window is open. His parents tell him that they allowed the girl to invite her brother inside and notice that Natsuno seems really upset for some reason. Some time ago, Tatsumi had gathered some vampires to raid the Ozaki clinic, and Megumi learned that he had also asked Shizuka to raid Natsuno's house. She asked him to spare Natsuno, so he revealed that Natsuno is aware of the vampire's existence, due to which he needs to be killed. Now assured her that Natsuno will rise as a vampire, but she reminded her that none of her family members rose, which made her cry. Tatsumi then warned her she cannot interfere in his plan or else he will purge her. Natsuno's father makes a chair for him, and when he goes to his room to put it inside, he notices that his room is filled with pictures of crosses and religious symbols, which shocks him. Natsuno also calls Kaori and Akira to let them know that they should tell their parents not to invite anyone inside. The next morning, Natsuno discovers that all the crosses and scrolls have been removed from his room, and his dad tells him that he removed them because he hates religious stuff. He thanks his dad for the chair and then heads back to his room. Later at night, he waits for the vampires to come for him, and at the same time, Megumi heads to his house to save him from getting killed. Someone knocks on his window, and when he doesn't open it, the person walks around the house to come through his front door. Natsuno recalls that his dad showed him the village when he was young and decided to move to the village because of its non-existent crime rate. He always disliked his parents' way of living because they always tried to go against the system, and they didn't even get married, due to which he had to take his mom's last name. He tells himself that he will definitely go out of the village, and just then someone knocks on his window again. He hears Toru's voice from the outside and then pulls up his blind. Toru calls him again, so he opens his window and suddenly someone grabs him to pull him inside. He resists the vampire and sees that it's actually Toru who is trying to pull him outside. Toru also notices him and runs away on seeing him. Megumi then finds Toru crying in the woods like a loser and realizes that Tatsumi sent him to kill Natsuno. He explains to her that Tatsumi will kill his siblings if he doesn't kill Natsuno first, and Megumi declares that she will kill Natsuno. He warns her that she cannot go against Tatsumi's orders, but she decides to not care and heads to his house to take him down. Natsuno looks in the streets for Toru as he thinks about all the moments he spent with him. Megumi finally finds him and thinks that she has to kill him for his own good. Just then Tatsumi meets up with him and tells him that he lives with the Kirishiki family. He calls him brave for trying to hunt down the vampires and then calls Megumi to step forward. Megumi comes out of the woods and they both approach Natsuno to hunt him down. Suddenly Toru grabs him from behind and bites him, which knocks him to the ground. An old villager Ikumi tells some villagers that she dreamed some time ago that a disaster will strike down the village soon, after which all the deaths started happening. The villagers believe her and she then makes scrolls for them which she sells to them for money. After Atsuko's death, the nurses discuss that Toshio seems possessed after her death and they wonder what's wrong with her. One of their co-workers calls to tell them that he is quitting and the nurses think that he must be scared of the epidemic. Kyuko tells Toshio's mother that the Kirishiki family's doctor is opening up a hospital in the village, and she then heads inside to meet with her new friend Tatsumi, who told her the news. Natsuno's father gets told by the local teacher that there may be an epidemic in the village and that there have been strange relocations throughout the town as well. The villagers discuss that there's definitely something sus going on and even call Toshio to discuss their concerns. He arrives and his exhausted look shocks all of them. The villagers ask him whether there's an epidemic spreading in the village and he denies the accusation. He comments that he would cremate his relative in case anyone dies and then leaves the bar without giving them any proper answers. Ikumi tells her daughter that the Kanamasa mansion is behind the villager's daughter, and his daughter begs her not to say strange things since people make fun of her too because of her mom. Ikumi thinks about how her daughter takes after her dad, who was also a useless idiot, and that her dad wasted all her life. She goes to the liquor store where she tells the villagers that the Risen are murdering the villagers, but no one listens to her and they kick her out for yapping so much. The store employee even throws water at her and she runs away in tears. Seishin finds Toshio at Setsuko's grave where he plans to dig her up in order to check whether she is going to rise or not. He declares that he will bring her in front of the villagers to show proof about the vampires, and Seishin thinks that Setsuko's husband Takujuru won't let him do such a thing. Toshio reminds him that they have to stop the vampires, otherwise the whole village will be wiped out, and Seishin walks away in distress because he cannot make up his mind. Later he is in his church when Tsunako visits again and asks him about his new novel. He tells her about the story of brothers and that the younger brother is following his older brother around like a dead corpse. He explains that the younger brother in his story is called Shiki, who is like a zombie, and Tsunako really seems to like the idea. He then asks her whether she is like the younger brother in his story, and she comes near him to bite his neck. He then whispers that he knows she is a Shiki and she smiles and walks away. Ikumi tells the villagers that she is heading to Setsuko's house to warn her husband that his wife is going to rise. More and more villagers start to pay attention to her, and she warns all of them that the Risen come at night and murder the villagers, so they need to be cautious as well. The villagers head to Takujuru's house where a relative tells them that Takujuru has fallen ill too, and Ikumi warns him that he will soon die like all his family members. She takes all the villagers to the clinic where they confront Toshio next and demand to know what he knows about the Risen. He refuses to reveal any information to them, and Ikumi declares that she will confront the Kanamasa family next to find out the truth. The villagers head towards the Kanamasa mansion where Toshio reluctantly follows behind them, and they make a lot of noise. Tatsumi spots them and Ikumi runs after him, so he runs inside through the back door. The main gate then opens and reveals the family head Saishuru, followed by Tatsumi. He assures the villagers that he is a human and that his wife and daughter cannot come outside because of their sickness. Toshio steps forward to examine him and discovers that he has normal breathing and pulse like a human, which shocks him and Ikumi. Later at night, a villager comes to get Ikumi from her house, saying that her family is being attacked by the Risen, and Ikumi rushes out of the house behind her. At the local government office, only a guy named Yoshikazu remains at the office because the rest of the officers have moved out or passed away. Even their chief doesn't come to office anymore because of sickness, and 2 temporary officers hired only come at night time. Kaori and Akira find Natsuno in the park, and Akira tells him that he tried telling his classmates about the Risen people, but they were already discussing it thanks to Ikumi's false claims. They wonder whether Kanamasa family is really full of vampires, and Natsuno then warns them to leave the village. He shows them his neck, which has a vampire bite wound, and tells them that he still has to deal with some things, but they should run away. The siblings remain persistent that they won't run away, and Natsuno warns them not to come near him. Later he waits for Toru to come to his house by hiding in the bushes, and he thinks about how Toru failed to come the previous day, due to which he is feeling better. Toru arrives at his window but doesn't knock, and Natsuno then steps forward to meet him. He shows him a cross which makes Toru step back and then throws the cross at him, after which he runs away. Toru runs after him and Natsuno asks him why they cannot coexist since some people may willingly give blood to them. Toru whines to him that vampires are predatory creatures who kill humans, and Natsuno then turns towards him with a wooden stake in his hand. Toru withdraws immediately and Natsuno drops his stake after looking at his expression. He then willingly offers him his blood and suggests that they should work together for a solution. At the Kanamasa mansion, Tsunako discusses with her family about the concept of Shiki and how wonderful it would be to coexist together, but she reminds them that they cannot control their hunger. Toru jumps on Natsuno and then starts drinking his blood. Megumi thinks about how she has to stay at a desolate place and Tatsumi comes to ask her whether she has really given up on Natsuno. She declares that she doesn't care about him anymore, and he then asks her to attack Kaori and her dad. He explains that Kaori has been getting close with Natsuno lately and Megumi decides to go after her. Meanwhile, Natsuno's dad checks up on him and urges him to visit the clinic, but Natsuno refuses to go anywhere. His mom tells his dad that the chances of some kind of epidemic in the village are really rare, but his dad keeps wondering whether there's an epidemic or not. He is about to head to the Ozaki clinic when he comes across Saishiro on the way, who tells him that he doesn't believe in the epidemic as well. He decides not to go to the clinic and then comes across Kaori and Akira on his doorstep. They ask to come inside, but he tells them to come the next day and Natsuno then lets them inside. They discuss his condition and the siblings then put charms around his room which may be helpful in warding off the vampires. Later, when Natsuno's dad visits the room, he finds all the charms really stupid and rips them off from the walls. The next day, the siblings visit his house again and find his mom in a really gloomy condition. They then discover that all the charms are missing from Natsuno's room and that his condition is worse. His dad then tells them to leave and Kaori asks him to let them nurse him. He tells the siblings to let him take care of his family and makes them leave his house, even though Akira tells him that the Risen are behind Natsuno's sickness. He then thinks that he was acting very childish, so he runs after the siblings and assures them that he will take care of Natsuno. Later at night, Kaori's dad comes across Megumi taking a stroll in the village and she bites his neck just when he recalls that she had died some time ago. Natsuno's dad opens the window to his room and heads back while Toru waits outside his house to attack him. Seishin starts his day greeting everyone in the temple and thinks about how less people have been coming to the temple due to the declining population of the village. Meanwhile, Takujiru's relative Atsuko brings him to the clinic and Toshio advises her to get Takujiro admitted. Takujiru refuses to get admitted and keeps repeating that he has to attend to the altar in his house, due to which he cannot be hospitalized. Toshio thinks that lately some of his patients have been making excuses not to come to the clinic and that the vampires must have hypnotized them to say such things. Just then Taki comes and informs him that Kyuko has collapsed in her room. Meanwhile, Seishin's father Shinmei insists that he wants to go and visit Takujiru even if he has to crawl, and his family members try their best to stop him. Toshio examines Kyuko only to find that her symptoms match the usual list of symptoms and decides to hospitalize her. Seishin calls him to ask about Takujiru and they both discuss how Kyuko needs to be protected from further vampire attacks. Toru arrives at Natsuno's window later at night and Natsuno tells him to hurry up or else his dad will discover him. He finally realizes that he won't be able to leave the village as Toru then starts crying on his body and then bites his neck. The next morning, Natsuno's dad gets a letter from Natsuno's mom telling him that Natsuno has died and that she cannot bear him anymore, due to which she is leaving him. He rushes inside and discovers Natsuno's dead body, which makes him start crying. One of the temple workers takes a sick leave, which gets the others thinking whether the disease is spreading in the temple as well, and they also discuss how there is a new funeral house in the village. Seishin takes his dad Shinmei to meet Takujiru, but nobody says anything and Shinmei returns from his house after looking at him. He then asks Seishin on the way whether his family members were also in the same condition before dying and whether the condition is spreading through the village. Kaori and Akira try to get into Natsuno's house and Natsuno's dad opens the door looking like a constipated sourpuss. He blabbers something and then shuts the door while some officers tell the siblings that someone has died in the house. Later they discuss that they should have protected him and Megumi overhears their conversation from the outside of the house. Kaori's dad arrives late in the house and her mom scolds him and the kids for making her work so much. At the same time, Toshio comes inside Kyuko's room and discovers that someone had just drunk her blood. Her pulse flatlines in front of him and she passes away. The next morning, the nurses discuss how Toshio has been taking care of Kyuko all by himself and Ritsuko even asks him to let them help him, but he refuses their help. He then puts a lot of ice beside Kyuko's body and waits for her to rise again after dying. Later, he is treating a kid's wound when he suddenly gets the feeling that Kyuko has awakened in her room. Later that night, the liquor store kid Atsushi thinks about his granddad Tomio hit him hard when his mother complained to him wrongly. Just then, Chizuru walks near his shop and chit-chats with him about the village. He invites her inside while keeping an eye on her melons and she accepts his invitation. The next day, a nurse tells the others in the Ozaki clinic that one of the nurses didn't reach home after she left the clinic. The nurses tell Toshio about the missing nurse as well, but he only gives them a cold one-worded reply which makes them really upset. The clinic then receives the news that Takujiro has passed away and the staff discusses how Toshio must be exhausted from all the work. Seishin informs Shinmei about Takujiro's death and he tells him to consult an elder of a family called Gohei to discuss funeral arrangements. Shinmei also gives him a letter and tells him to post it to the Kirishiki family, which makes him wonder whether he has found out the truth. Later that night, Kaori hears a noise outside her window who tells her that her dad has died and she realizes that it's Megumi, which shocks her. She calls Akira loudly, who comes running into her room and informs him that their dad is dead. Akira barges inside his dad's room but doesn't find him there and the siblings then discover his body outside his room. They tell their mom that their dad is dead, but she doesn't believe them and instead calls a doctor whose card was placed beside the dead body. The card belongs to the doctor who has opened up a new clinic in the village, and a doctor named Ibuchi tells their mom that he will arrive shortly. He then arrives at their door a minute later and introduces himself to the family. Toshio's mom gives him dinner to eat and asks him about Kyuko's condition, so he assures her that everything is alright. He has waited 3 days for her to rise, but she is still in the same condition as before and he thinks that he will wait for just one more day. He then heads to her room where he notices that there are some changes taking place in her body and that her body is not decomposing like it should. Megumi asks a Kirishiki family employee about Natsuno's body and the employee tells her that Natsuno's father may have taken his body to the city to get it cremated. She starts bawling loudly and Masao makes fun of her, so she throws a rock at his face and starts slapping him. The employee tells Megumi that she may even be moved to the big city squad, in which they take people from the big cities so that new or useless vampires can feed on them. Toshio begins to film the changes that are taking place in Kyuko's body and he exposes her skin to the sunlight, which burns her skin. He then moves her body to somewhere inside the clinic and keeps filming as her skin heals by itself. He then calls the head nurse to inform her that he is closing the clinic due to Kyuko's condition and she assures him that she will let the others know. He draws blood samples from Kyuko which allow him to make various observations and soon she wakes up. She starts panicking and he decides to knock her unconscious. His experiments proceed as he figures that anesthesia or drugs or medicines don't work on vampires and he keeps cutting her up to find more about vampires. He discovers that sharp sounds and religious sculptures make them afraid and he starts wondering how they can be killed. He then stabs her with a wooden stake despite her pleading and tears and keeps stabbing her till she dies. Seishin arrives at the clinic only to find him covered in blood and Toshio tells him to help him clean up. Toru comes to Natsuno's grave 7 days after his death and places flowers beside the window. Toshio explains to Seishin that he wants to stop the contamination from spreading, due to which he had to take such extreme measures, but Seishin only walks away without saying anything. He thinks that killing anyone is wrong and unjust and he arrives home to find that his door was open. He then finds little notes on his draft novel which ask him why the little brother killed the older brother in his novel and whether it can be called a murder when he never had any ill intent. Seishin meets up with some villagers in a bar and they wonder why he is calling them to meet in the daytime. He tells them that whatever Ikumi told them is all true and that they can open up Nao's grave to find out the truth. One of the villagers storms out in anger and he asks the others to help him out. They tell him that he must be exhausted and then start discussing how there is a new study which involves using human bones to treat diseases. He realizes that they don't want to get involved and they also tell him straight on that they don't believe in such supernatural things. Toshio then heads to the local government office to get someone to help him out, but he finds no one inside. A worker tells him that all the workers come at night time because their chief also comes during that time, so Toshio heads outside and decides to wait for the night. Later he heads to the office again and finds everyone working inside like a normal office. He asks an officer about the number of deaths in the village, but the officer tells him that there have been no deaths in the village. He asks him about specific villagers who died in front of him, but the officer explains to him that they all moved out of the village, due to which their death is not counted. He shows them an envelope filled with death certificates of the villagers and declares that he will raise a commotion to get help from the outside. Just then Chizuru arrives and tells him that they will make him his prey if he tries to go against them. She promises to pay him a visit soon and he then leaves the office. At the new funeral house, the funeral's manager Hayami assures Tatsumi that he will handle all the funerals perfectly, and Tatsumi decides to stay at one of the funerals to watch how he manages them. Later at night, the villagers have a funeral for the liquor store boy Atsushi and Hayami gives them a performance which shocks his family members. After the funeral, he shows Tatsumi how he will snuggle the bodies to the basement so that the families get an empty coffin and how they don't have to waste time in digging up the bodies to check whether they will rise or not. Tatsumi senses that Atsushi will rise as well, and Hayami compliments his werewolf senses. Kyuko's funeral also gets held at the temple, and the village ladies ask the nurses not to help out in the kitchen because they are afraid of the epidemic. Taki comes and scolds them for not doing any work, which makes one of the nurses break down. Soon Seishin arrives at the funeral and pays his respects, after which the funeral concludes. The next day, the troubled nurse hands in her resignation to Toshio, and another nurse tells him that he has been acting very cold lately, due to which his staff is very demotivated. The noble families of the village hold a meeting in which they discuss that they should hold the annual festival early this time due to the increasing deaths, and they start to discuss the arrangements while Toshio thinks that none of them want to accept the truth. Later at night, he receives a visit from Natsuno, who asks him whether he believes that Megumi is really dead. He answers him that she is both dead and alive, and Natsuno then walks away after hearing his answer. A long time ago, Tsunako was just a girl who lived the life of a self-proclaimed bratty princess and spent her time surrounded by her parents and servants. Her life changed one day when she met a man at one of her father's parties who was a shiki, or a vampire. In the present, Toru visits Natsuno's house again after killing another villager and cries like a wuss, which is the only thing he knows how to do. Saishiro comes and tells him that Tsunako is calling him, so he should go to Kanemasa quickly. Nao also looks over the villager and thinks about her father-in-law Takujiro, whom she killed. In the past, Nao's own parents ran off after committing fraud and becoming addicts. She always wanted a home and a family and got to achieve these when she married Mikiyasu. However, none of her family members rose again after their deaths, and she keeps thinking that all of them will meet somewhere, but she has been left alone again. She thinks about how she invited Saishiro to her house along with her friend June when they were having a party, and heads to June's house to target her next. Toru heads to the Kanemasa mansion as he thinks about how the shiki are called to the mansion to get scolded or killed. Tsunako brings some tea for him and asks him why he is feeling regret after killing Natsuno, so he becomes triggered again and yells that it's natural for him to feel guilt. She shares her own sob story with him, in which when the shiki killed her, she woke up in a coffin and screamed out for help. Somebody got her out of the coffin and she attacked him in return. Her parents then confined her to a storehouse where a different worker would bring her food each day, and she would attack each worker day after day. She learned about her identity from the books around her and soon escaped the warehouse to look for her actual family. She discovered that her family had moved away from their original house and then began searching for them everywhere. She kept searching for them year after year, even when she knew her parents must have passed away by then, and then her siblings must have passed away as well. In the present, Megumi comes across Yoshikazu, who is Akira's father and has risen as well, and he blames her for turning him into a shiki. She advises him to kill his own family and to bring them over to this side, but he finds her advice horrible. He still visits his home and discovers that he cannot enter his house for some reason. His dog starts barking, which makes his wife Sachiko come outside, and she falls back in shock on seeing him. She thinks that he is a ghost and tries to run back into the house, but he just grabs her leg and then jumps on her to bite her neck. The next morning, Akira and Kaori discover her body in a sick state, which makes them think that Megumi must have attacked her too. They skip school and Akira heads out to buy charms and amulets to protect her. He comes across some villagers who tell him that lately the empty houses in the village are starting to get filled up, and that someone has even moved into Akumi's house after she and her daughter went away somewhere. He runs back to his house and gets some steaks from Kaori, after which he rushes to find Akumi's house to attack the shiki by himself. Toshio and Natsuno discuss that they will attack the shiki before the Kagura dance, which will be held in November, and Natsuno mentions that all the shiki need to be killed, including himself. Kaori barges inside Akumi's house and goes through every room till he comes across a shiki's body inside a closet. He is then about to stake his heart when Tatsumi appears behind him and knocks him out. Later at nighttime, he wakes up and finds himself in ropes. The shiki in front of him also wakes up and decides to make a stake out of him. Seishin keeps wondering what he should do about the situation, and on the other end, Toshio starts to make pretty wooden stakes for the shiki. Later at night, Seishin is wandering in the woods when he comes across Toru, who refuses to face him. He realizes that he is a shiki, and Toru confesses to him that he killed Natsuno and that he is coming back after attacking someone else too. He admits that the others forced him into killing Natsuno and that he cannot control his hunger, due to which he has to kill someone, which makes Seishin comment that he cannot help it if he wants to live. The next day, he receives the news of the death of one of his temple workers, and that the worker asked his family to take him to the funeral home rather than the temple. All of a sudden his dad Shinmei goes missing as well, and he reads a letter on his device which was addressed to the Kirishiki family, inviting him to come meet him in his room. The nurses at the Ozaki clinic discuss how most of the patients have been going to the other Ibuchi clinic lately, but they assure themselves that things will turn out to be fine. The roadside restaurant owner Kanami brings her mom to Toshio because she has fallen sick all of a sudden. Toshio tells Kanami that her mom isn't sick because of an epidemic, and his comment makes Ritsuko wonder whether there is a reason that she saw now wandering in the woods the other night. She even asks Toshio about his comment afterwards, but then decides to leave the topic without getting any clarity from him. Seishin wonders whether Shinmei knew about the truth behind the Shiki, and Kaori arrives at his doorstep covered in dust. She asks him to give him a post-death name in tears and explains that her parents are dead and her brother hasn't come back home yet, due to which she is going to die next. She keeps yapping that Megumi is after her and that she has already dug her grave too. Seishin gives her some empty advice which is as useless as him, but he keeps thinking about the solution to the problem. Soon he leaves his temple and even visits Toshio's clinic but doesn't meet him. Toshio gets a call from Seishin's mother asking him whether he has been in contact with Seishin and informing him that Seishin has gone missing. Toshio wonders whether Seishin has arrived at some kind of an answer, and meanwhile Seishin heads to the Kanemasa mansion. Later at night, one of the village elders is coming back from the festival practice when he comes across two men on the way. He realizes a moment later that the men had died some time ago, and just then the men start chasing after him. Ritsuko gets a call from a fellow nurse named Yasuyo telling her to come help her since someone is in her house. She in return calls Toshio and tells her about the situation, after which she rushes to Yasuyo's house with her dog. At the same time, Natsuno also runs through the woods while Tatsumi chases after him. The elder man runs to another village house where he comes across a Shiki family who has been living there. His stalkers also arrive and then drag him away to have a feast. Ritsuko sees a moving company van on the way and spots Yasuyo's face in the window, but she cannot do anything to stop it. Two men then approach her with red eyes, and sometime later Toshio finds her on the road in a sick-looking state. He takes her to her home and asks her to get admitted in the clinic, but she refuses his help and starts crying. Toshio gets back to his clinic and finds Chizuru inside, who was waiting for him. He lunges at her with his stake, but Saishiru shoots at him from miles away through his sniper gun. Chizuru tells him that Saishiru is a human who is their friend, just like his friend Seishin, who has joined them recently. He then tells her that he doesn't want to die because he wants to see the village die out first, but she still bites his neck and orders him to burn all the data related to the deaths in the village. The Shiki develop a system in which they take some of the dead bodies to some huts in the mountains because the funeral house has been filled up. If the dead bodies rise after a few days, they give them an orientation, otherwise they bury the remaining bodies who don't rise anymore. Tatsumi barges inside Natsuno's house and Natsuno's body lunges at him with a knife. After stabbing him, he starts to yap loudly that he has finally killed Arisen, and Tatsumi casually asks him to let him come inside, which he accepts. Tatsumi then meets up with Natsuno and discusses with him that werewolves are a rare subspecies of the Shiki who can walk in sunlight. He asks him whether he has seen Akira around, but Natsuno doesn't give him any answer, and Tatsumi then picks him up by his neck. He notices that Natsuno hasn't drunk any blood, due to which he cannot exhibit his natural talents, and asks him to come over to their side, otherwise he will soon kill him. Later at night, Atsushi has fun driving Chizuru around, and the other Shiki also wander around the village casually. A werewolf employee named Yoshi tells Toru that Tsunako favors Chizuru a lot because they have a mother-daughter relationship in which Tsunako is the mother and that she likes him a lot too. He gets promoted to watch the mountain hats in which they are now keeping the bodies, and soon Ritsuko's body arrives at the hut. She wakes up as a Shiki and both Toru and Yoshi greet her. She catches on quickly that she is a vampire without a pulse, and after Yoshi leaves them, she asks him to let her stay in the burial clothes. She also decides to not feed for the time being and thinks that her family members must have passed away as well. Toshio gives himself a blood transfusion and his memories come back to him when Chizuru had hypnotized him. Sometime later, the Kagura dance festival takes place in the village and Toshio hands over the data to Chizuru which she had requested from him. She tells him that Tsunako plans to transform the whole village into a village for Shiki, and he hopes that she will spare him for the end. He then asks her out on a date to go to the Kagura festival, and since she is a desperate she accepts his proposal. He even makes her wear a bandage which will serve as an excuse in case any villager asks them why they are hanging out together, and she starts recalling her past as a human when she used to live with her human family. They both head to the festival and come across many villagers on the way. Chizuru happily chats away with them and manages to mix in like a normal human. Soon they arrive near the temple and Toshio motivates her to go inside even though she feels really weak. He reminds her that he cannot disobey her, and she reluctantly approaches the temple with him to watch the Kagura dance. The villagers start to gather around Toshio when they see him, and Chizuru feels like she is getting trapped, so she decides to head back. Toshio insists that she should rest at the shrine office, and he even asks Megumi's father to help him lead her inside. He touches her arm and finds her skin very cold while Chizuru officially starts freaking out. She gets away from them and trips on her feet, which knocks her down. Megumi's father checks her pulse and discovers that she doesn't have any pulse, while Toshio tells the villagers that she is arisen. They all surround her, and just then, Saishiro barges inside in Atsushi's car. Atsushi's father Tomio stops the car with his bare hands, and Atsushi pulls the car back in reverse because he believes he can never beat his dad. The villagers see Atsushi, which makes them realize that the risen are real people, and then start throwing stones on Chizuru, who tries to run away from them. One of the stones knocks Chizuru down, and Toshio tells the villagers that they cannot be killed so easily. He approaches her to stake her heart, and she jumps on him. Tomio holds her down, and Megumi's father then drives down the wooden stake in her heart again and again till it kills her. Toshio lectures the villagers about the existence of the Shiki and asks them to join him to hunt them down. Tatsumi informs Tsunako about what happened, and he suggests moving away from the town, but Tsunako reminds him that their number is too large, due to which they cannot move away. She orders him to eliminate Toshio, which will disperse the mob and to reduce the number of the villagers. She tells him to cut off any contact from the outsider world as well, and when he leaves, she starts crying for Chizuru. Seishin tells her to run away, and she reminds him that she is near her goal. Toshio tells the villagers the different methods of killing a Shiki and how he tested on Kyuko to get all the knowledge. Toru's father declares that he cannot kill anyone with a stake, and he walks away with some of the villagers. The villagers devise a plan to block all the roads to prevent any escape and to inform the rest of the villagers about Shiki. Tomio advises everyone to move in groups, and suddenly a power outage occurs throughout the village. Yoshi warns all the vampires to take precautions and to head back to their base without letting anyone see them. A group of village ladies head to Konami's house and warn her about what they are going to do. She decides to stay in her home and then heads inside to meet her mother, who has just risen recently under her watch. The villagers continue to visit different houses to warn the others, and meanwhile Megumi heads towards the village as well. Masao warns her not to go and even suggests that they should run away together, but she just calls him worthless and kicks him down. Toru keeps Ritsuko in a room with the nurse Yasuyo, whom they have abducted for this purpose. She refuses to feed on her, and Toru begs her to attack her as he keeps crying. Kaori remains hidden in her cupboard in fear as she waits for Megumi to come kill her. She hears a noise outside, so she gets up to attack the Shiki and tiptoes downstairs. She then spots a man inside and hits him with her bat. Atsushi heads towards the Ozaki clinic to take revenge on Toshio, and Tatsumi thinks that he cannot take any revenge because the sun is going to rise soon. He heads to the Kanamasa mansion, where he tells Seishin to take care of Tsunako when the sun has risen and to hide with her in the cellars because all the villagers are now surrounding the mansion. Seishin promises to protect her and even offers his blood to Tatsumi to awaken his powers. Later, he gets an 4 drip to nourish him, and Tsunako tells him that the older brother in his novel killed his younger brother in order to survive. The villagers meanwhile barge inside the Ibuchi clinic and find many dead bodies there. They continue to barge inside the houses and kill the Shiki while Tsunako falls asleep beside Seishin. The villagers barge inside Kanamasa mansion and start breaking everything to pour sunlight inside. The villagers start barging inside one house after another and come across a Shiki's body who is fast asleep. Tomio drags the Shiki outside, whose body starts burning in sunlight, and with the help of another villager, he stakes him. They find more Shiki and do the same to them. Some villagers then take Toshio back to his clinic, where the vampires have killed his mother and have left a message that she has been killed and won't rise anymore. They see some footsteps leading upstairs, and the villagers follow them to discover Atsushi's body hiding inside a cupboard. Tomio drags his son's body outside, and the villagers think that he won't be able to kill him, but Tomio yells at them that Atsushi killed Toshio's mother to take revenge. Atsushi tries to run away, and Tomio drives the stake in his heart with his own hands, which kills him. Later the villagers dump all the bodies inside a hole, and Toshio tells them that there are definitely more Shiki hiding somewhere because they only have 20 bodies. They discuss that the Shiki may be at the underground tunnels which are used to transport water, and suddenly one of the villagers gets shot. He falls down, and the villagers notice that someone is shooting at them from one of the faraway buildings. Natsuno stops Saishiro from shooting further and tells him that he wants to stop Shiki. Saishiro starts yapping to him that it's normal for Shiki to hunt humans and that he wants to turn into a Shiki as well. The villagers explore the tunnel to find Shiki, and as the sun sets, Tsunako wakes up as well. Tatsumi comes to greet her and assures her that Saishiro will be alright, but she asks him to check up on him. Seishin then heads upstairs with him and gives him his blood to feed him. Ritsuko still refuses to feed on the fellow nurse, and Toru keeps begging her to feed on her like a pathetic fool. She explains to him that she will hate herself if she feeds on her, and then begs him to let Yasuyo go. He He opens the gate to let her out and she tries to restrain him so that Yasuyo can run away instead. He then pushes her inside and she starts crying as she pleads with him that she cannot kill anyone else. He finally gives in and escorts Yasuyo outside even though he knows that he is endangering his own people. Another day comes close to an end and Toshio thinks that they should block anyone from entering the village by lying to them that there's a special village festival going on inside. They discuss that they still have not found the Kanamasa people and that there are some villagers who are alive but are attacking the villagers. Toshio reveals that the villagers can be controlled by the Shiki through hypnosis and that they should restrain such people in the temple till the hypnosis wears off. Tomio suggests killing such people because they can be working with the Shiki without any hypnosis, but Toshio reminds him that they cannot murder one of their own. Tsunako whines to Seishin that she is going to be punished soon for killing so many people and that she was only trying to feed herself. She asks him whether she is really a sinner, but he doesn't give her any answer. Ritsuko and Toru stay side by side and huddle close as the sun starts to rise outside. One of the villagers arrives at the temple and starts shooting at the others. Tomio then lunges at him and declares that he is with the Shiki, after which he hits him with his hammer. The village ladies along with Masao's sister-in-law Chizuko drag the bodies to a van and Chizuko notices that one of the bodies is still moving. She casually stakes him again and then proceeds to eat rice with the rest of the ladies like they are having a picnic. At the same time, Saishiru's dogs chase after Yasuyo and jump on her in the woods. Tsunako cries in front of Tatsumi and Seishin because she thinks that the villagers will kill her when she is sleeping, and Tatsumi assures her that he will escape with her, but she doesn't believe him. She asks him why he tried to take his own life and he tells her that the older brother in his novel killed the younger brother because he was in despair. When he realized his reason for killing him, the younger brother told him that he had freed him by killing him because he was only serving in the temple to get a good favor from the god. The older brother then vanished and the older brother realized that he was both the younger and older brother himself. Masao tries to find a safe spot where he can fall asleep and he keeps moving from one place to another. He then falls on the ground due to sleepiness but gets up and heads to his own home. He then calls Chizuko there and begs her to let him inside. He keeps pleading with her that he will behave and won't attack anybody, so Chizuko opens the door for him and waits for him to enter with a bat in her hands. Yoshi and her two Shiki minions attack a group of villagers and bite them. They order them to attack the other villagers and Yoshi then orders the Shiki to head back to the Yameri region where their main base is. She also orders one of the villagers to kill Toshio with a gun and he heads towards the temple. She then comes across Saishiru on the way and he shoots at her because he has also been bitten by someone. Yasuyo manages to get away from the dogs by climbing on a tree and she wonders how she can get back to the village. The villagers start to run out of a place to bury the dead bodies of the Shiki and Toshio explores a place behind a hill where they can bury all the bodies. Yasuyo manages to find her way to the villagers and she informs Toshio that Yameri is the base of the Shiki. She fails to tell him about Ritsuko and the villagers then drive towards Yameri to take the remaining Shiki down. They come across a blocked road and use an excavator to get to Yameri where they discover a horde of Shiki. The villagers then start to stake the Shiki one by one and Tomio even comes across the body of head monk Shinmei. He thanks him for saving him and Tomio then ends his life. Toru and Ritsuko's bodies get carried out as well and the villagers discuss that there is no remaining place where Shiki can hide anymore. One of the villagers gets an idea that there may be a basement at the Kanamasa house and the villagers rush towards the house. Tatsumi realizes that the villagers will discover them, so he packs Tsunako up in a briefcase and tells Seishin that they are escaping through a secret tunnel. He tells Seishin that they all follow Tsunako because she always struggles against the odds and they all look up to her. Tatsumi then uses a car to burst out of the gate and the villagers rush after him in their cars. Seishin then uses another car in which he puts Tsunako and drives out in the opposite direction. He finds the road blocked, so he drives the car through the forest and drives into another road. Just then Toshio's car also drives by and they notice Seishin, so they quickly turn around to follow him. Seishin takes Tsunako to his temple where he tries to hide her and the villagers arrive at the temple to search for him. He hides himself inside a cupboard and the villagers barge inside the temple. They start inquiring his family members and when they don't cooperate with them, they kill his family as well. They search the whole house and Seishin uses the chance to run outside. A villager spots him and they both struggle to take one another down. The villager manages to wound him but Seishin pushes him down, which knocks him out. He then escapes into the forest and the villagers try to find him. He then leaves Tsunako's briefcase under a tree and keeps walking ahead with his wound. The sun sets as the villagers keep looking for Seishin and finally Tsunako gets out of her briefcase. She hears the noises of the villagers in the forest and starts to run away. Tatsumi gets chased by the villagers as well and soon they manage to make him drive into a ditch. He gets out and starts to run away, so one of the villagers shoots him down. He still gets into the car and starts to drive away, but he runs into something. He then gets on top of the van and gets shot multiple times, which causes him to fall down the bridge. Tsunako discovers Seishin's blood on the ground and she runs in its direction to find him. Natsuno takes Kaori to the clinic where she wakes up and finds Akira sitting beside her. In the meanwhile, Megumi dodges all the villagers and makes a plan to escape the village. Toshio tells the villagers to find Tatsumi's body to drive a stake through his heart. They all then notice that the Yameri region is burning, so they rush towards it to deal with the fire. Tsunako runs into Seishin's weakened body and some villagers get near her, so she leaves him and runs deeper into the forest. Megumi sees that the villagers are distracted by the fire and she uses the chance to cross the road. The villagers spot and run after her while she tries to get away from them. The fire at Yameri region gets out of control and Toshio orders everyone to leave the bodies and to abandon the area. The villagers run trucks over Megumi and she starts complaining loudly that she should not have been born in such a village. One of them drives a truck over her head and they then drive a wooden stake through her heart. Natsuno finds Tatsumi in a stream and declares that he has come to stop her just when the villagers corner Tsunako as well. Some of them notice the fire spreading and head back to report to the temple, while some of them continue chasing after Tsunako. The fire starts to spread rapidly and the villagers discuss that they need to take care of the bodies before the outsiders get into their village. They make plans to burn the bodies and to clean the bloodshed quickly. Tsunako hides herself in a bush while Tatsumi tells Natsuno that he drank Toshio's blood in order to hypnotize, due to which Chizuru's hypnotism didn't work on him. They both fight one another while the villagers cut down trees to stop the fire from spreading more. Tsunako arrives at Seishin's church and whines to God that why is he forsaking her. Tomio discovers her in the church and chases after her. At the same time, Tatsumi beats up Natsuno, who tells him that he is not with the humans or the Shiki, but he simply doesn't like the Shiki. Tomio catches Tsunako and strangles her while she struggles against him. The fire spreads towards the village despite the cut trees, and the villagers keep trying to pile the bodies of the Shiki together to burn them. Tomio is about to stake Tsunako when Seishin hits him from behind and kills him. At the same time, Natsuno manages to push Tatsumi into the pile of Shiki bodies and then uses explosives to explode everything around him. Seishin tells Tsunako to escape with him, but she tells him that she wants to die now. He convinces her that there's no god and his eyes turn red as he tells her to abandon everything. The whole village ends up burning and the villagers evacuate due to the fire. The neighboring villages send firefighters trucks to deal with the fire, and at the same time Seishin heads out of the village as well with Tsunako in the briefcase. That's all for today, my fellow men of culture. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe the channel for more anime recaps.